So, who am I? Well, my name is Amanda Nicole. I'm a divorce survivor and a woman of God.
I'm passionate about seeing women discover and participate in their God-given purpose. So, I make videos and digital products on everything from Bible study and Bible teaching to help you learn more about God, to videos and products on marriage and divorce to help you get out of toxic, ungodly marriages. I'm on a journey to grow this channel and to reach a larger audience. So I thought now would be as good a time as any to tell you guys my origin story, why I'm doing this, what has led me to be who I am, and all of the insane details in between. I feel like I've lived about a dozen lives, but never shared the details of any of them on this channel. So we're going to embark upon a journey to get you up to speed about me. My journey begins in crisis.
For me, it was just kind of, my life kind of had been running on autopilot, and it had just been, things had just been happening to me instead of me happening to life. And so it had gotten me to a place where I was in a bad marriage and I was in a bad job. I was in a bad church. My whole life was just not submitted to the word and will of God. And so it was the beginning of my spirit rising up and saying, something's not right. This isn't God's plan for me. And so
this was a very unique place for me because I'm such a go-getter, a mover, and a shaker. I'd consistently been able to encounter any obstacle and run it over within a matter of days or weeks at best. But I had been in this rut for years. It was like no matter what I tried, every path was blocked and my efforts were futile. I was working 3 jobs and running a business, and yet my now ex-husband and I were still barely getting by. I was a leader at a church and over several ministries, and yet I was miserable, and I felt like I wasn't making any progress in terms of doing what I was called to do and purposed to do. And my biggest obstacle was my marriage. It was clear that it was sucking the life out of me, and it had been doing so for close to a decade. I felt lost, I felt miserable, and I was determined to seek God for answers. His response was shocking.
Let me get back to the story. I laid down to sleep that night and I thought about what God had said, and then I had a dream. In my dream, it was my wedding day. I saw myself and then my husband at the altar in the church 8 years earlier. We had joined hands and we were looking into each other's eyes, repeating our vows after the preacher. I smiled at him and he completed his vows and then turned to the preacher in anticipation of repeating mine. The scene was exactly as it has been years earlier, except for the next part. As I turned to look at the preacher, I noticed a bright light behind him. Suddenly, a huge white figure in the shape of a man that looked like it was 1,000 feet high bent over and put its mouth right up to my left ear. I froze in place. I knew who the figure was by the way I felt by being that close to his presence. I felt like a child who was in trouble, awaiting her punishment. But as he got right up to me, I immediately felt peace and love. He whispered in my ear, but with his grand stature and presence, it still sounded like thunder. He said to me, "My daughter, I love you, but I don't approve of this union." Just then, I startled awake.
So I had to take inventory of my life and understand where I was at, where I wanted to go, how to get unstuck, how to stop spinning my wheels and actually make progress on my goals. That dream helped me realize that there was a very clear reason why I had been stuck. I was in an unauthorized marriage.
That there are 2 different kinds of marriages in Scripture. You have a set of rules that God has for marriages that he put together. He specifically says, for marriages I put together, don't let any man separate. So there are marriages that God himself puts together, and those marriages reflect his heart for his bride. And so those marriages are marriages that he can save.
It means that the two people that are in those marriages are two people that he destined to be married. So it means that maybe one person just hasn't matured enough and he has to mature them a little bit and they got married too soon. Or maybe the enemy is just attacking the marriage and he's going to protect it. He's going to fortify it. You know, he has a vested interest in keeping those marriages together because those are marriages that he has put together and he has purpose surrounding those marriages. But that's not the only kind of marriage that there is. Everything that God makes, the enemy tries to pervert. And marriage is no different. There are some marriages that the enemy has put together that we have been tricked into believing that it was God when it wasn't. And those marriages are toxic. There's just no two ways about it. Those marriages are abusive, either physical, sometimes it's sexual, sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's verbal. They're always abusive, they're toxic. And when you try to apply the biblical principles to your marriage, it gets worse and it doesn't work. And there's a reason for that. It's because it's not a marriage that God put together. And you are outside of God's will by being in it. And so when you're asking, why hasn't God saved my marriage? It's because he wants you to be in the marriage that he created for you. And you're sacrificing all of the fruits of his spirit that are tied to that marriage by being in this one.
I was in a marriage that God hadn't put together. And where marriages that he did put together give life to the participants in them, mine was sucking the life out of me and stealing my purpose, my drive, my dreams, and my aspirations. It was even beginning to steal my health. Are you enjoying this series on my origin story? I hope that you are. If so, would you do me a favor and like this video and comment down below your favorite part? Tell me how God spoke to you during this video. I'd love to hear it, and it will inspire others. Subscribe and stay tuned for the next part in the next video. God bless you, and I love you.